Welcome to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Join the podcast mogul Phil Better as he interviews successful entrepreneurs that make their living in the digital world. Now, let's join your host, Phil Better, and his special guest today on Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast.
Gentlemen, welcome back to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. I am, of course, your host with the most, Phil Better. And today I am excited to have, I believe, our first Emmy Award-winning broadcaster on the podcast. They are an incredible journalist with over 20 years of experience with news outlets, news networks, and outlets such as NBC, Fox, and so many more. But they did this all while overcoming their crippling anxiety of public speaking, which a lot of us have. They have a podcast where they teach so much about their knowledge on presenting yourself on camera, as well as creating confidence and overcoming that anxiety. Please welcome my guest, an Emmy Award winner. I know I'm going to just continue throwing platitudes at you, Kerry Barrett. So yes, our guest is Kerry Barrett. Thank you very much for being here, Kerry.
It's my pleasure. And after that intro, I feel like I should hang out with you more often.
I like to think of myself as the ultimate hype person. Like, I will hype everybody up because I just, like, I get the opportunity to talk with so many amazing people. Yeah. Like, I just think of myself as a kid in Montreal. Like, I'm not a kid anymore, but like I still have that mentality. So when I get to talk with people who are like Emmy Award winning or multimillionaires and all this stuff, I'm just like, I gotta hype these people up because it's a thank you. So Kerry.
And you know what? Your name, I realized as I was listening to the intro, Phil Better sounds like feel better. And now I feel better after having listened to you. Thank you.
Don't tell anybody. That's what's the secret of marketing, right? Make things good. I have to thank my parents for that because without them, I wouldn't have this great name.
There you go.
Kerry, enough about me and throwing platitudes towards you. First of all, thank you for coming on the show, on the podcast. I would love to just, in your own words, who you are and what you're about.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. My name is Kerry Barrett, and I am at my foundation a media trainer. You mentioned my background in journalism. I was on air at network and affiliate stations for 20 years. Ended up at NBC in New York City. And that is where I finished my journalism career. And now I teach corporate and executives, certainly about on-camera presence, persona, delivery on camera for pitches and Zoom calls and sales calls and everything else that's done on video. On the small business and entrepreneur side, I teach a similar process, how to show up well on camera, fine-tune your messaging, distribution, but usually their end goal is slightly different. They're not necessarily looking to get on CNBC. They're looking to be able to create video content for their sales and marketing, most notably things like video podcasts and social media.
I love it. I'm glad you're on here because you're going to probably give us so many tips for my my audience. And of course, I'm going to steal them all for myself to make myself look better because that's the only reason I have this podcast is to steal information. Or learn information and then disseminate it to other people.
You're like a conduit.
Yeah, that's all I am, a conduit. Take some and then give it the rest away. Kerry, how did you... so you're in journalism and now you're over here teaching and running your own business. Was that always the dream to run your own business, or was it to be a journalist and become like Barbara Walters?
Yeah, my dream wasn't even to become a journalist. Actually, I was a pre-veterinary medicine major because, as you mentioned, I did have this debilitating fear of not just speaking, really, of even being seen. Very shy, extremely introverted. And so I was going to work with animals, loved animals, but a big chunk of that was because I didn't really want to be in front of people. Organic chemistry put a decisive end to that dream. And it took a little bit of time off and re-enrolled in a communications program, really having no direct intention of moving into the journalism field, really just looking for something that I didn't have organic chemistry in. And
fair enough.
And it was broad enough that I could find some sort of track that I would be able to gain enough knowledge to make a living once I graduated. And one of the ways that I was trying to incorporate, credits into my schedule and make up for lost time for the time that I took off was I got an internship at a news station. And that is where I fell in love with TV news. I'd moved around a lot, lived overseas a lot as a kid. I've always loved storytelling and sort of learning what makes people tick and seeing the behind the scenes of how they live in different cultures. But I hadn't thought about putting that element together. Then I started the idea of journalism and storytelling on video and presenting began to percolate. And so, cut to 20 years later, starting my own business. No, to answer your question, well, I don't know anything about business. All I knew was that when my contract was up, I was so friggin' tired and so exhausted. I worked the morning show, love morning TV, could not barely function outside of work because at that point I had 3 kids. My sleep schedule was a mess. So my contract was up and I'm like, I'm out. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm out. And in the process of networking, I thought I was going to go into PR or production. So many former newsies, that's their path. And I met with somebody who did PR and communications at a big law firm in New York City. And she said, you're crazy to go back into corporate. You need to start your own thing. You've had this experience that you've curated. Everything is digital now. We're all on cameras. Go fix everybody's problems. And I was like, all right, done. Like that is how much thought I put into starting a business. And it was a very tough row to hoe. I didn't have an offer. I thought I was going to teach people how to speak, public speaking coach. I'd go to a networking event. People would ask me how I was going to scale. And no kidding, I would have to be like, hold on a second. I don't understand your question because I don't know what scale means in this context. Google, what does scale mean? And so it has been a tough 4 years, very tough, but very rewarding as well. And we're all still learning.
I love it. I do like it was like my contract's done. I need my life back.
Yeah.
And not of I'm fed up of these people and the corporate BS that some people go through. So I love that it was your choice in essence, and it wasn't a malicious leaving, if you will. So it was you took there was that time off that you took, right? Just to be like, I am gonna find myself. You're gonna do your eat, pray, love type thing.
Yeah. And
then you're like, you thought you were going to PR.
Yeah.
You didn't think of starting your own little PR firm?
No.
So you're like I'm going to go into PR. You talk with one person who does corporate PR. And they're like, don't do corporate. And you're like, TV and teaching everybody how to look good on camera, how to present themselves. That was, wow.
I mean, like I said, I didn't really know what I was going to do. I thought I was going to do public speaking. I realized that now, really public speaking, a lot of it anyway, is done through the camera, and people have the same fears and the same, lack of skills. They bring the same baggage to showing up on camera as they do to public speaking. Most people hate it. And the one thing that I knew how to do when I started my business, even if I didn't have an offer yet or anything like that, was I could open up a camera and start talking into it. And so I created a LinkedIn. I didn't have a LinkedIn profile, created a LinkedIn profile and just started creating little videos, again, without any strategy or anything. And that brought people to me for camera and camera adjacent work, whether it was video production or they're needing a little bit of help with PR. And so I took a sprinkling of what people were coming to me for, and I sort of created my own thing, which is, it's like Toastmasters, but it's for the camera. It's Camera Masters. And the truth is that, I was all over the place when I first started. PR agency, maybe that was a good idea, but what I ultimately decided that resonated best with my own skills was my story that brought me through my fear and brought me, to the point where I was good on camera and I was able to use it to build a brand in the news industry, and then able to use it to build an audience in my business. And so I thought, well, why don't I serve the person that I used to be and help people get better on camera?
I love that. I love that little thing, helping the person you used to be, because that's how I look at my podcasting company. And a lot of the entrepreneurs that I've talked to have that same piece of advice. And I love that you're just, again, hammering it home. Once again, even a person who's 4 years into their journey versus a veteran of just mastering. And I have to say, I'm super jealous. You look like you're so poised. I'm over here jumping around, and I'm like just watching you, and I'm like, I need to be poised. Kerry's poised. I'm being poised.
You know, I like to call my camera attire, at least when I'm sitting down, it's like the digital version of the mullet. It's business up front and then party from the waist down. I got sweatpants and slippers on. So
I learned that from also another journalist. I was doing their show, and he was like you said, the mullet of of the camera attire. Sharp dress shirt up top, shorts and slippers on the bottom. I love it. Another secret for dropping here. I want to hear about a win, either for yourself or one of your clients, that just like cemented why you do what you do. So like if you were able to accomplish something, like you won an Emmy, so I'm pretty sure your accomplishments for yourself are like, I got an Emmy, like highest form, you know, of kind of like praise, if you will, from your industry. But in your business right now, in the last 4 years, have you had a win that you're just like, yeah, this is going to push me through?
Yeah, I've had a couple of big wins for me. I'd love to share one from my client, but for me, I've had huge corporations come to me for services based on strictly LinkedIn content. Wow. And I'm on all the platforms, but I have learned that storytelling and showing up on camera, when people come to you, they're already coming to you pretty much ready to buy. They've seen enough. They've grown to trust you. They've grown to value what you're putting out there, and they come fully warm and ready to go. And those, not only do they convert easier and pay more, the sales process is much quicker as well, because they've already made, you know, up their mind. And so from LinkedIn content, I would say I've generated, you know, if I'm getting like really specific, of multi 6 digits of content from, you know, a year of LinkedIn content, or multiple 6 figures of work from a year of LinkedIn content. In terms of my clients, I have, I should say, a pair of commercial real estate brokers, and my hat's off to them. They recognized that there was space in their industry for video content creation that nobody was doing. And so they reached out to me again from LinkedIn and said, we want to put together a digital video show. And we branded them the Brokers. You should look them up on YouTube. We do videos and podcasts where we talk about market trends in the Northeast. And we've done 12 episodes. They have brought in multiple investors and clients from those shows. And they're now at the point where they can go to a real estate conference. In fact, they were at a conference in Canada just last week where they walked into the event venue and somebody from Canada was like, oh my gosh, the Brokers, I watch your show. And to hear that small steps consistently taken, because they're only doing a few of these small steps consistently taken, and them growing the confidence, and I help host the show as well, has just created this sort of sea change for them in their business. It's brought people in, it's created visibility, people remember them and recognize them, and that continues to build their brand within the space. So that is a huge win for them, but also a huge win for me.
Oh, that's an amazing win to have. Knowing that your clients got recognized.
Yeah.
In another country where that's not their normal demographic, is that I love hearing that. That's amazing. Yeah, oh my God. Cool. That is a little a little dirt off your shoulder there, Kerry. Would you do anything different?
Oh my gosh. Would I do anything different
in regards to business? I know that's a huge question, like in your whole life. No, let's go for the last 4 years. Like in the last 4 years.
Like,
Yes.
how long do you have?
Right? Like, I could list off. My therapist over here has a list long, you know?
Like every week she's like, okay, when is this list over? So there's a lot of things that I would have done differently. I'm glad that I didn't honestly know everything that I know now, because I do think I would have paused, and I'm glad that I didn't. As tough and as stressful as the last 4 years have been, I'm really glad that I took those steps. I wake up every day actually excited to do this, and I hadn't felt that way for more than a decade in the news industry. And again, it had nothing to do with the people. I love a newsroom. It's a fantastic place to be, but I couldn't do it any longer. And so, yes, there are a few things would be to trust my gut, which I know sounds very basic, and you hear that sort of platitude thrown around all the time. But I knew very shortly after starting my business that there was a lot I didn't know. And so I allowed myself to be manipulated, I suppose, whether not maliciously, but I knew something was off with some of the advice people were giving me, either because they didn't understand what I was doing, and perhaps it's because I didn't really fully understand what I was doing at that point either. And so I would get, oh, this person says I should go this way, so I went this way. And then, oh my gosh, this other guru over here says I should go this way, so then I went this way. And really, I needed to be able to get rid of all of that and just center for a second and get down to the basics. And had I done that earlier, I would have saved myself a lot of time. I would have saved myself countless dollars that I spent on wasted marketing and things I wasn't ready for. And I would have saved myself a lot of heartache as well. So while it has very granular and tangible results and effects at the base, I should have been able to just center myself and think about what I needed to do, rather than, sort of like a something. What's that expression about? Shiny object syndrome. Shiny object syndrome. That's what it was. I would have gotten rid of that. There's your answer.
Yeah, I feel you there with the shiny object syndrome. It's just so enticing to see the results, and then you're like, oh, I can do that. If they can do it, I can do it, right?
Yeah.
And then you realize, no, there's a lot more work.
Yeah. They made it sound so easy.
Yeah. Learn life isn't easy. It's simple, but it's not easy.
No.
Where do you see yourself in like 5 years? If we snap our fingers, Kerry Barrett, the Kerry Barrett Show, the podcast, which we're going to touch on in a bit, but where do you see yourself in the future?
Well, I would like to dial back on how much I'm working. I'm still in the process of growth. So I would like to get to a point where I feel content, which means more time with my family, more time for traveling and the things that we really love. That's not really a core part of my nature. I tend to always to be looking for the next thing. So I'm hoping that I can get to that place. And I would like to have, I'm moving into a speaking arena. I'd like to have my speaking business going, as a revenue generator, as a revenue stream, not a separate speaking business, but part of my offers now. I'd like to have that going. And I would like to have my digital program for small business owners running robustly. I'm just getting ready to launch the second version of it, and I'm really focusing a lot on that in the coming year and the following.
I'm looking forward to that and staying in touch with you, seeing what you're having for that and see that growth. And hopefully I can see you go relaxing every once in a while, not slamming down like Gary Vee, hustle.
Yeah.
Because you go hustle for a bit, and then you need to remember you can't hustle forever. We're not machines. We do wear down, so we do need to take that break. And sometimes that break, then you jump back into hustle mode afterwards, right? You need to recharge the batteries. Totally. So I do want to see and hear about you traveling the world and speaking. I think that's a good speaking career talks to both. But I want to get into maybe like your podcast. I want to talk to you about your podcast. I love podcasting. I haven't had the opportunity to listen to it because busy bee, but I do have it keyed up on my playlist. So after I can do some walking, I can listen to it. But why did you start a podcast?
So I actually started a podcast way back when I first started my business. I did a marketing podcast with a friend of mine who runs a marketing agency. We were called the Mavens of Marketing. Ooh. And it ended up not being exactly the right audience for me. Her audience and my audience just actually didn't really overlap all that much. She works with, medium-sized businesses. They're B2C and they are product oriented with a complicated sales cycle. I'm a coach. I work with executives. So you see the problem.
Slightly different.
And not that I can't work with these people, but that wasn't what I was looking to grow. Mm-hmm. And so I stopped hosting, and then I launched the Kerry Barrett Show as of this recording about 8 weeks ago. So there's 8 episodes now, and I intentionally named it the Kerry Barrett Show rather than something that had to do with marketing or video, because it gives an opportunity for us to talk about so many different aspects that go into or are video adjacent. And some of them are technical. Some of them are, how do you start your own show? How do you show up on camera? What are these, tips, tricks, techniques for shooting or whatever? But there's also other elements that go into it that are of interest to entrepreneurs. For example, I just recorded one today with somebody who is a branding expert for salespeople and talks to them about how to improve their sales efficiency as well. And so that's applicable to the audience. Confidence is applicable to the audience, storytelling, mindset. And so it gives us an opportunity. When I say us, I mean me and the audience, to learn from and speak to a whole host of different people that are, all related in one way or another in terms of the end result for their clients, visibility, efficiency, presence, brand, etc.
I love it. It's brilliant. It's great. I'm if people don't know, I'm a fan of podcasts.
I know you are.
Super secret. No one knows this.
Podcast mogul.
Yes, that's true. I have it on the screen right here. I love it. Like when you were first doing your podcast with Media Maven, which is a great name, by the way. I just love it. Rolls off the tongue. And obviously Kerry Barrett Show is great branding for yourself because it grows with you, like right now we're talking about you being the person for people to be on camera, being camera ready and present themselves and get over their fear of public speaking and all that incorporated, but it grows with you with what you grow, right? It's like a personal thing. Were you nervous starting something that's not really broadcasting on camera, like interviews and stuff? Or were you just like, this is just another feather in my hat?
No, I was not nervous at all about starting podcasts or anything like that. I know that there is, and I don't listen to a ton of podcasts, but I do listen to a few, and I know that there is value there. And I know that it nurtures people and, gives them hopefully whatever that next step is that they need to take, the reason that they tuned in, the thing that they're looking to learn. There is certainly inspiration and motivation, but I like to include some tangible or tactical tips as well, something people can go and implement. And I know that I would have found that information helpful had I known where to find it when I first started, strategy, etc., content strategy also. And so, no, that part wasn't at all nerve-wracking. Here's what I will tell you, which is probably surprising, but if somebody's listening and they're like, I could never do this, I want you to know that it didn't come without fear for me either. When the pandemic first hit, I started doing webinars, and I hadn't really done live webinars. I hadn't done live webinars up until that point. My calls had been video focused, but one-on-one for the most part. And I did a webinar for a local group, local to me in New Jersey. And I was teaching them how to, the basics of how to deliver on camera. And there were a couple hundred people there. And, it's a very simple, I'm talking into a camera and I can't see the audience. That part is exactly the same as being on the news. What's different is that when you're on a news desk, there are other people around you. You have your co-anchors, the traffic person, the weather person, there's floor directors who are in front of you and cueing you, and there's a producer in your ear. So you have some energy to play off of around you. On a webinar, there's none of that. People are all muted. A lot of them have their cameras off. You can't even see whether they're paying attention or, for all flipping you the bird behind the lens, and you can't see it. And I was about 15 minutes in, Phil, and I was like, my lips were getting numb, and I was getting all like, I don't know this is so weird. I don't know if I can do it. I did it, and it was very successful. But I want anyone listening to know that if it felt weird for me after being on camera for 20 years, it's not at all unusual for it to feel weird for you also. And it's not indicative of your skill or the audience's attention. It's just indicative of the fact that talking to a little black hole instead of, a face is different for a lot of us. And speaking, even if you're great at speaking on a stage, it doesn't necessarily translate to speaking on a camera because of what I just told you. You can't feed off the audience. And so what I relied on was just, I know how to do it. I know how to deliver. I got to compartmentalize that noise and just fall back on my skills. I may be spiraling in my head with self-doubt, but I know that I can't let that shrink my persona on camera. I still have to lean into the camera. I still have to be enthusiastic. I still have to have a smile on my face and have energy and use hand gestures, even if I have no idea whether anybody's listening. And so I could fall back on the skills and just deliver that way and sort of compartmentalize that downward spiral that was happening concurrently.
Yes, that fun little voice that we all have that just says,
yeah,
you can't do it.
Yeah. You're really bad at this.
Yeah, you don't know what you're doing. It's like, no, I delivered the news. I got an Emmy. Screw off, little voice. That's at least your shotgun blast to the little voice, and we all have to find our own. Yeah. I would like to know maybe a tip you have for business owners, entrepreneurs, looking to start their video journey. Like, obviously, showing up consistently, good lighting, at least somewhat good lighting, not all dark and never in front of or behind a window, always in front of a window. So the light's coming in naturally. But like, how to gain that confidence so that you appear, maybe a tip around that, appear confident on camera, even though you have the little voice yelling at you.
Yeah. Well, I want to start out by saying what you first put out there, what you ever put out there on your website's a different story. That's a video that has to have a little bit of durability, but what you're putting on social media has a very short shelf life. And so it doesn't have to, it should not be a super high production value. When we see high production value videos on LinkedIn or wherever, we recognize that we're being sold to, and we tend to sort of dig our heels in a little bit there. Nobody likes to be sold to on LinkedIn or Instagram or YouTube. They want stories, they want connection, they want an experience, they want to learn something. So your story, your value is what you should be putting on social, sort of top of funnel discoverability, bringing people in, and then you're converting them through whatever your funnel process is, video, email, sales call, if it's a high ticket, whatever. And then they're converting at the bottom. So that LinkedIn post that says, hey, I'm starting a new masterclass, sign up at the link below. That doesn't go anywhere. Even if you've built a big audience, it never gets near as much traction as a value post. And so recognize that it doesn't have to be fancy. It's really just about story and you. Everything that you do can be replicated, your process, your offer. There's probably other people who are doing, if not the exact same thing, something very similar. They probably have less experience than you, and yet they're making more money. And it's because they're willing to put themselves out there. In terms of one tip for looking confident when you are on camera, even if you're not feeling it, the the hands down, the biggest mistake that people make outside of not looking in the lens is they shrink themselves. And what I mean by that is they tend to speak in a more monotone voice. They don't move, they don't blink, they, they become scared. Their vocal range reduces. And it really goes back to our caveman brain, if I'm being honest, our lizard brain that sees the audience as a predator. And we don't want to go in front of them and make, big movements and loud noises, because then we attract the predator's attention to us. And our cave clansmen are now pissed off at us because we've attracted the predator. And so they kick us out and reject us. And now we have rejection and low status and a very likely painful death. So that's where all of that comes from. It's the same concept as public speaking. One way to counteract that is you got to compartmentalize that, and you've got to deliver to the camera with energy. And energy doesn't mean that you are like bouncing around or wildly gesticulating your hands or anything like that. It just means that you know that there are challenges to delivering to the camera and you are overcoming them. Aside from the fact that we get scared and we naturally shrink, you then have the lens, you have the cord that goes from the lens into the computer, and then that goes to wherever somebody else is watching it, and you have the microphone, and all of that degrades the presence. Plus you have no context outside of this little box, right? The viewer can't see what's going on around you. You can't even 9 times out of 10 see the viewer. And it's taken a 3D person and put them into 2D. So there's a lot that you have to overcome aside from just up here, technically and physically, in order to appear confident. And the number one way to do that is to keep your energy up. And here's how I describe that. Imagine that you are sitting at a restaurant table in a noisy restaurant, and there's somebody in your party who is sitting 4 people down, and you're trying to talk with that person, but you have to overcome the noise and the distraction that's going on around you in order to be able to effectively communicate with them. So what are the things that you deploy, the techniques that you deploy to talk to them? You probably lean forward to try and get their attention, or like signal that this is something that's exciting. You probably amplify your facial expressions. You project your voice a little bit more. You may use hand gestures like, oh my gosh, these 3 things are crazy. I did this thing and then this thing happened. Then, oh my gosh, this happened too. That sort of communication is what you want to replicate when you are on camera. For most people, those of you who want a number, it's about a 25% increase in what they are speaking, what they're doing naturally. 25% bump in energy. And what I suggest is sitting down, flipping open your camera on your phone and just riffing about something for 30 seconds. It doesn't have to be work related. It could be coffee or your annoying neighbor or whatever it is. And really, really get into it. And then go back and look and watch it. This is just for you. See if the energy that came through on the screen is the energy that you thought would come through on the screen, or that you thought it was the energy with which you delivered. And 9 times out of 10, it's not. It looks significantly reduced. And so work on that one thing. Just work on the energy until you feel like you have it down pat, and then move on to the next thing.
As you were talking, you're shrinking. I'm like, okay, I'm going to sit up now. Look into the lens. I'm like, damn, I'm failing here. But no, that's great advice for everybody, just to appear more confident on camera. I love it. Thank you so much for that. We're coming to the end of the interview. I hate it because I'm pretty sure you got about 1,000 more stories to share with us, with many golden nuggets, since you're an expert of storytelling. But I want to flashback. I'm able to snap my fingers. Yeah. I have 10-year-old Kerry right here. Mm-hmm. You have one piece of advice that you can pass on to your younger self. What piece of advice are you giving yourself?
What other people think of you is none of your business. And I say that with the recognition that I was very shy and introverted, and I was always seeking external validation. And that made part of my life very, very challenging, but I also recognize that it was coming through that challenge that brought me where I am today. So I would say that with sort of it doesn't matter, knowing that I'm still going to struggle with it. And ultimately it's going to be good for me because I'm going to learn from it and I'm going to be able to teach other people from it as well. But yeah, that's it. What other people think of me is none of my business.
It's a great piece of advice, even valuable today for some people. Yeah. So, Kerry, thank you so much for that. Pardon me. I'm going to jump off stage here. I'm going to let you have the last little bit. Tell my audience where they can find you, where they can listen to the podcast, where they can get your service, whatever you're offering. The floor is yours.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me, Phil. I do feel better. And if you are interested in learning a little bit more about how you can work with me, or you just like to subscribe to some of my content for valuable tips and tricks, I post almost daily on Instagram and weekly on YouTube. You can find me on both of them at I am Kerry Barrett, Kerry Barrett. And you will also find links to my free resources and my paid programs as well. Instagram and YouTube is where it's at. Thank you.
Kerry, I can't thank you enough, and I appreciate coming on the show and sharing your wisdom with my audience.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So yes, thank you, Kerry. To my audience, as you well know, the links will be in the show notes down below to connect with Kerry. Make sure you check out her YouTube and social media so that you can take yourself from looking on camera to being a superstar like Kerry, not me. She's better at this than me. I just sound better. I have a nicer voice. That's all I got going.
You have a very lovely, you have dulcet tones. The dulcet tones of Phil Better.
There we go. I like it. It's the next podcast. I want to thank Kerry again for coming on the show, and you loyal listeners for listening. I hope you have enjoyed the show, and I thank you very much. And remember to always invest in yourself.